Sudarshan, shall we give a couple more minutes?
Yeah, yes, please, boss. Sorry, I just logged in because I had a Hindustani music lesson just before this. So
Okay, nice. Maybe you had to sing for us one of the
yeah, not
classes,
me.
yeah.
Chitra will sing. I mean, if I sing, you'll be very upset. So
You've been practicing for a long time, sir.
yeah.
Yeah, no, Sudarshan, you sing well. I've heard you.
Oh dear. Okay. Thank you, auntie. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, we'll sing one day, definitely. We learn both bhajans and as well as the normal songs and the ghazals as well. So
Okay, so maybe for the
Gita Jayanti.
Krishna
Yeah, Gita Jayanti.
Jayanti,
Yeah.
for Krishna Jayanti, maybe we should.
Even Bhagavad Gita,
Okay,
Sudarshan sings well. I mean, chants well.
okay, cool.
Not at all, auntie.
Lots of hidden talents that I didn't know that Sudarshan had for. When he was a brahmachari, I knew he had some talents, but since becoming a grihastha, the talents have grown. Now with vanaprastha, it's going
Who
exponentially.
said I'm in one of his?
Okay, shall we get started? Yeah, shall we? Yeah, okay. So Badram Karanebhihi Shrunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabhihi Yajatraha Sthirairangair Tushtuamsastanubihi Vyashema Devahitai Yadayuhu Swastinah Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinah Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinah Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Yo Antah Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये बोधं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम् देवं नारायणं नत्वा सर्वदोषविवर्जितं परिपूर्णं गुरुंश्चान् गीतार्थं वक्ष्यामि लेशतः. So good evening. So this is the 7th in series on this exciting chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we are almost hitting the first half of chapter 15 today. Hopefully we will finish the first 10 verses. So before we get started, I would like to request Veena Kankanwadi ji to come on to the video and to recite the first 10 verses. We've heard a lot about your talents as well. So the stage is yours, Veena ji.
Namaste, Majuji. Thank you for this opportunity. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Atha Panchadashodhyayah Purana Purushottama Yogah Shri Bhagavanuvacha Urdhvamulamadha Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavita अधश्चोर्ध्वं प्रसृतास्तस्य शाखाः गुणप्रवृद्धा विषयप्रवालाः अधश्च मूलान्यनुसन्ततानि कर्मानुबन्धीनि मनुष्यलोके न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन छित्त्वा ततः परं तत्परिमार्गितव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी निर्मानमोहाजितसङ्गदोषाः अध्यात्मनित्या विनिवृत्तकामाः द्वन्द्वैर्विमुक्ता सुखदुःखसंज्ञैः गच्छन्त्यमूढाः पदमव्ययं तत् न तद्भासयते सूर्यः न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम ममैवांशो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनःषष्ठानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात् श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढानानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः। हरि ओम श्री कृष्णार्पणमस्तु। हरि ओम। हरि ओम।
So yeah, that's right. Thank you, Veenaji. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had muted my audio. So just before we get into the crux of today's class, which is verse 9 and verse 10, what I'll do is I want to do a brief recap of verse 8, which actually sets the scene for what verse 9 and 10 is all about, and in fact what verse 11 is all about. So I don't think we will have full time to do full justice to 11th verse. So we'll stick to verse 9 and 10 today and see how we take this. So shariram yad avapnoti yacha yat utkramati ishwaraha gruhitva yetani samyati vayuhu gandhan iva ashayat. So that is a padapata. You split it open and look at each word and understand what the meaning of the word is. So we spent some time talking about this who is this Ishwaraha. So Ishwaraha, we gave a lot of evidence from Mundaka Upanishad, Purushottama, Vishnu Sahasranama, and even Shankara Bhashya to try and understand who this Ishwaraha is. So that's from scriptural evidence. And if you look at the etymological evidence of Ishwaraha, okay, so that itself is quite explanatory. So Isha means, so Ishwaraha is Isha and Vara. Yeah. So Isha means he who is a controller. Vara is synonymous with Para. Para, Vara, and all, they're all synonymously used. So if you look at it, Para is the highest one. So Isha Vara means the one who is the highest controller. So even if you look at the etymology of Ishwaraha, it's very clear that this is the supreme controller that is being discussed here. Yes, Jiva is also a bit of a controller of this body that he is possessing, but he is not an independent controller. He is a dependent controller. So that concept needs to come in there. So Ishwaraha is God. So what does this Ishwaraha does? We spent a lot of time talking about what are the constituents, what is the anatomy of a jiva. The jiva is on its own, it's a Swarupanandamaya. It's Satchit Ananda is the intrinsic nature of the jiva that the Vedas and the Upanishads, the Gita and all the scriptures tell us again and again that the Swarupa of the jiva is Satchitananda or Jnanananda Swarupa. Now, the covering of this jiva is non-material, but the jiva has got a material covering. The subtlest form of covering is linga sharira. Then on top of that is what the jiva acquires grosser bodies as it makes its passages through various forms of life. So that is the gross body or the stula sharira. So what the verse basically is talking about is, does the jiva on its own accord, does it come into a body, or does it on its own accord, does it leave the body? It does not. It appears that it comes in and then it resides in a body, it takes birth in the womb, and then it comes out after 9 months or so, and then it lives for 100, 120, 116 years or so, and then it goes up. So this whole career of the jivas actually is not under their control. So under whose control it is? It's under the supreme control. So when it says ava apnoti, we said ava means comes down, apnoti means when the god decides that he wants to bring this jiva into this particular point where the fertilization of the egg and the sperm happens, and then this jiva has to be there. Yes, so that happens at that point in time. So avapnoti, he brings the jiva down, And at the same time, when the jiva has spent its lifetime in this world, he takes this back. Utkramachi. So ut means uttara, kramati means take. So we looked at that. And so now the question is, if these things are happening, if these things are happening all the time in the universe, in this mrityu loka, why don't we see it? Why don't we see these jivas coming down and the jivas going up all the time? Why are we not seeing it? And for that, Krishna is giving us an example. This process is happening all the time, just like how you see in your mundane world. Vayur gandhaniva ashayat. Just as how a rose, when you stand in front of the rose, when the wind blows, how the fragrance of the rose actually flows through and you can perceive it. Similarly is how when the lifetime of the jiva is gone, this supreme drags it along. And then the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also gave a wonderful example of this chap on a bullock cart who goes from village to village. Each village is a body, and the bullock cart is this jiva, and sitting on that bullock cart is this Paramatman or Vishnu or Krishna, who is actually taking this jiva from one village to another village. It's a beautiful metaphor for us to remember. This is our state of being. And then we also said that, as discussed in Chandogya Upanishad, how the jiva is fully dependent even at its last stages when it departs. When God decides, I have to do Utkramati now, jiva has got no other choice, has to go with him. Yeah. So that is the sequence of events that we discussed last week. So now moving into the next verse, and before I go into that, you need to appreciate how the flow of thought of Veda Vyasa in this particular section is. So initially, the first few verses, he spoke so much about Brahmanda. He spoke about how there's Urdhva Mula, Madha Shakam, etc., etc. He spoke about Brahmanda, and then he spoke about the Moksha Sthiti, how this moksha is different from this Brahmanda. And then he said, but you cannot see the moksha elsewhere. Does it mean that you don't have any option? You don't have any opportunity to see me? No, he said, I am actually right inside you. So now you make your journey into the Pindanda. So then he is now spending a lot of time talking about this Pindanda inside us. What is the situation? Where is the Jiva? Where is the Paramatma? What is this body? What is this Jiva Swarupa? What is this God's Swarupa? He is talking about that. So he goes back and forth. Then what he will see is after verse 11, he will go back to Brahmanda again and talk about this. Then again, he'll come back to Pindanda. So he will start a move between these three areas to essentially show how great and big this Paramatma is. Just to remind you, this is Purushottama Yoga. This celebrates the greatness of the Supreme. So when we are doing chapter 15, we are in the business of understanding what is the essence of this verse from which I can understand the greatness of the Supreme. And as I said before, the Jivatman is a subordinate being. He is a sidekick. He is just there in this verse. You can understand him from a Jiva's perspective, but the real philosophy of Purushottama Yoga is to understand each verse from the Supreme Being's perspective. And that is what we are attempting to do in these verses. So moving on to the next slide. So immediately Krishna says, Shrotram Chakshuhu Sparshanam cha Rasanam Granam Evacha Adhishtaya Manascha Ayam Vishayan Upasevate. So that is the breaking open of this verse. Now I want to remind you in verse 7, and as Beenaji so nicely recited today, this verse 7, essentially what does it say? Mama eva amsho jivaloke jivabhutaha sanatanaha manaha shashtani indriyani prakristani karshati. So if you look at the second line, he said manaha and indriyani. So indriyani and manaha together form 6, which is shashtani. So he's taking this 6 now, and he's doing a further explanation how by taking this 6, you can actually understand my Swarupa. Forget about Jiva Swarupa. How are you going to understand the Swarupa of the Purushottama? By actually looking at this mana and the 6 and the 5 Indriyas together forming 6. So we are going to dwell with Manaha, Shashtani, Indriyani here, because Krishna, Vyasa, they expand this. What are those 6 here? He has listed Shrotram, Chakshuhu, Sparshanam, Rasanam, Granam, Evacha, and Manas. So he has given these 6, and our cartoon is back with our 2 birds inside. So I have kind of spread it out for our visual understanding. So Chakshuhu is eyes, Shrotram is your ears, your Granam is your nose, Rasanam is your tongue, Sparshanam, I've just put the hands there because we touch things with with our hands, which basically has got the skin, and it's got all the sensory organs of the sense of touch, and there's various types of those, as you know. So that is Sparshanam. So these are the 5, and the 6th one is the Manas, which is in the head. Yeah. So he is giving us these 6 in the gross body. Then I want you to also remember that the philosophy is not about the gross body, it is about the adhyatma, and it is also about what is there in our hridaya, in our cave. So there are 2 chaps, as you know. So there is the jiva, which is you could call it as atma here, and this is the adhika atma. So this is the supreme being, whom Krishna has already said adhyatma nitya, and he has said that before. Yeah, if you recall that verse. So that adhika atma is also sitting there, this jiva is sitting there. The jiva has got the gross body, it's got all these indriyas and the manas. So this is talking about the human form of life. Yeah, this is talking about the human form of life, because all our philosophies is stuck with talking about the human form of life, because this is the sadhana sharira. This is the body that we have to not only interact with the external world, but also make our own individual philosophical progression. And that is why all of philosophy that is being discussed here is pertaining to the Purusha, which is the person or the human being. Yeah, in lower forms of life, if you take up these indriyas, some indriyas are highly evolved, some indriyas are not highly evolved. You know, some animals, as you know, have much more sense of smell than human beings, but the manas is highly and most highly evolved in the human beings. So we are always talking only about human beings here. So when we take these 5 indriyas, I just want to remind you about the Brahmanda here. So although we are talking about Pindanda, never forget that there is always also a Adi Bhuta interpretation of this. So I want you to think about the Brahmanda. And you are all now experts on this because we've done it so many times, this whole sequence of events of Mula Prakriti, Mahat Ahankara, 3 types of Ahankara has 3 aspects: Vaikarika, Tejasa, Tamasa. Tamasa Ahankara then becomes Pancha Tanmatra. What are the Pancha Tanmatras? Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, and Gandha. Now, the Tejasa Ahankara aspect becomes Indriyas. What are the 5 Jnana Indriyas? Shrotra, Tvak, Chakshus, Rasana, and Grahana. Those are all the same things that Krishna is talking here, if you look at it. So he's talking about this Pancha Jnana Indriyas. Okay, and these Pancha Jnana Indriyas are actually in contact with the Pancha Tanmatras, which are the objects of the sense organs: Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, and Gandha. So this sequence is related to how the creation happens and how the Brahmanda happens. Now here there is an interesting aspect here that I just want to introduce this concept, and then we discuss this probably in the next verse or the following verse as to why there is this difference. So when you look at the sequence in which during creation that the Indriyas happen and the Pancha Tanmatras happen. So the first thing what happens is you have Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, and then the corresponding Akasha, Vayu, Tejas, Aap, and Prithvi, they come into being during creation. And the Jnana Indriyas also, they also take a sequence. The Shabda is the Tanmatra, the Jnana Indriya is the Shotra. Sparsha becomes the sense organ is Tvag, which is touch. Rupa, the sense organ is the eyes or the chakshus. Rasa or the taste is the rasana, that is from your tongue. Gandha is the smell, and that comes through your olfactory receptors in your nose. Okay. So when you look at the Brahmanda creation sequence, it is Shrotra, Tvag, Chakshus, Rasana, and Grahana. But when you look at this verse, what is Vyasa Krishna is saying here? He is first said Shrotra. So that makes sense. It kind of tallies with the sequence here. But then he has reversed it. He has used chakshus, then he has used twag, sparshana is twag, then he has used rasana and grahana. So I have just put a red box there to say that he has flipped it around. He could have said shrotram, sparshanam, chakshuhu, going with the Brahmanda, but he's given it a slightly different twist here. So I just want to take a sip before I move to the next slide and ask the question, why do we think that Veda Vyasa or Krishna has done it? Because what I want to do in these classes is to look at verses from this perspective of why the sequence is different. What is it that Veda Vyasa is thinking about? Because that is what our acharyas, the core bhashyas and the acharyas talk about this, not just skimming the surface, but actually going and actually asking, why is this different? Okay, so do we have any ideas here at this point of time why Veda Vyasa has said Shrotram Chakshuhu Sparshanam Cha Rasanam Granam Evacha in that sequence? Any takers for that, please? Just to open up the discussion today. Shushrut.
Madhu, is it's because first we hear about something, say, for example, a new mobile phone has come, then we say, oh, so everybody starts talking about it. Oh, this is a new one. So it's Shrotram. So we hear about something. Then we say, oh, I would like to see how it is. So that the next step would be, oh, I want to see how this new phone works, how it is. So vision, a chakshu comes second. Then you want to touch it and sort of do work with it. So that's sort of for the mobile. Say, but if you take example of any food, it's the same sequence, and then you want to taste and also smell it. So it's the order that how a mind works, or the sequence.
Wonderful, Neetaji, perfect. That's 100% correct, 100%. So here, although we remind ourselves of how the sequence in Brahmanda goes, here Vyasa is telling us about how the practical experience of a jiva is when it conducts its affairs in this life. And as Neetaji so rightly pointed out, that is the sequence of events, and that's the reason why he gives you this sequence. We'll take up this concept a bit further in the next slide, because then it becomes even more interesting, because there are so many words here, chakara, eva, they're all coming in this particular verse, and we need to understand why they are, rather than just to say cha means and or also, and then leave it at that, because there are lots of subtle philosophies that are
Madhu, is there another explanation for this? Because in the creation lessons, you were saying that, like everything is in equilibrium. And then God says, Om. So the first is the thing, the vibrations, and they traveled through ether, which is received as a word. Or have I got it wrong?
No,
Creation occurs from subtle to grosser. This is the order in which it comes. But
yeah, you're right, Deval. So that is for the Panchabhuta creations and Pancha Tanmatra creations in the creation, where it goes from the subtle to the grosser, and the grossest is the Prithvi. So that you're absolutely right on the sequence for Brahmanda. So just to remind you, here we are talking about, remember, we are in that Pindanda situation about how we are going to understand what is it that the Supreme Being is actually doing in this body. I just wanted to introduce that concept that in this body, the way the indriyas operate, there is a sequence, the way in which the bodies operate. Our bodies operate our bodies employ our sense organs in a particular sequence to do our affairs in this life. So just to bring to your attention that this order here that Vyasa Krishna has said is slightly different from the order in which the Brahmanda sequence happens. So they will park that thought for a minute, because we're going to come to the next slide where we will discuss this in some detail. So now when you look at this Indriya sequence, so you got 5 Indriyas, 5 Jnana Indriyas. And of course, the Manas is also an Indriya, because what does mind do? Mind with its 5 components, it processes all these nerve impulses that come from the sense organs, and then the brain processes it. And then the Jiva sitting there then will perceive this particular information and say, now I have a knowledge of having perceived this rose or this this dish or whatever. Okay, so that sequence I've summarized in the bottom panel here. You have the sense objects, you have these 5 sense organs, it goes to the gross body, then the mind processes it, and then the soul then perceives this. Yeah, and then behind the soul is this Brahman chap who is also sitting there. Now, up to this equation, we don't have any issues because that is the normal physiology of how it happens. Now, of course, there is a controversy as to whether the soul actually perceives anything or not. Does the soul actually receive the knowledge of the external world or not? So that is philosophical views that are different in different schools. So, for example, just to bring that concept here, Advaita, for example, does not consider the soul as a perceiver of knowledge, a perceiver of sense information. The Advaita view stops at the mind level, antakarana as they call it. That is where all the operations, karma, activity, perception of sense objects, everything happens at the mind level. The soul is just an inert substance that is there, which is the same as Brahman. So that is the Advaita view. And there are other views, of course. There are the Charvakas, of course, don't even believe that there is a soul. There is no, the materialists do not accept the soul in this equation. They will just stop at the brain level, and say this brain is made of matter, and this matter perceives matter, and somehow there is a consciousness and awareness that happens, full stop. So that is a materialist or Charvakas view. Buddhism is also a similar concept. So they have those 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas, when they mix together, they form what is seen as matter. And your brain is also made of 5 skandhas, and your consciousness is also a component of those 5 skandhas. And there is no requirement for a soul, or there is no requirement for a God who is behind all this. So that is the Buddhist view on this. If you like the Jain view on this, they would go up to soul to perceive and gain knowledge, but there isn't a Brahman, there isn't a God in the Jain philosophy. So there is this whole spectrum of plethora of views about how this process happens, but we are going to stick to the Vedantic version of it. What is the Vedantic version of it from other schools? So the realistic schools of Vedanta, for example, will say there are sense objects, there are sense organs, the brain processes, and it gives to mind, which is also a component of the brain. The mind then processes, sends the information. Then there is a soul. The soul then receives this information, and the soul then says, I have now gained the knowledge of this particular sense object here. So that is a normal physiology. So the question then here is, in this whole sequence, what is the role of this Brahman chap who's sitting there? If he is there, which Vedanta says is there, but he's sitting there, what is his role in all this equation? Remember, we are in Purushottama Yoga and we are celebrating the Purusha. So we need to understand here, what is this Purusha's role in this whole sequence of events? What is God's role in all of this is the question for the next slide. So now the answer as to what is the role of the Supreme in this whole sequence of events, the answer to that is very beautifully given within this verse. So when Vyasa says, Shrotram chakshuhu sparshanam cha rasanam granam evacha, there are some very, very important words here that actually gives us the knowledge as to what is Purusha's role in this. Adhishtaya. Manashta, we know what it is. Then there is this word ayam. Okay, Manashta, ayam. Vishayan means sense objects. And then what does it say here? Upasevate. Okay, so there are those words that needs to be looked at very, very carefully in this verse to understand what is it that Veda Vyasa wants us to understand about our bodies. So let us take up 2 words, ayam and adhishtaya. Okay, so let us start with adhishtaya. So what does adhishtaya means? So adhishtaya, like in our usual way of learning and understanding Gita, in this particular verse and in many verses in chapter 15, you will see a lot of upasargas. Upasargas are prefixes. There will be a lot of prefixes that will come in these words, and you need to watch those prefixes. For those within the group who are doing Sanskrit classes, you will be very familiar with this. So look at those prefixes and try and understand what does it actually mean. So let us take about adhishtaya. Look at the etymology, for example, for this word. Adhishtaya basically is 2. Adhika plus Stita or Staya. Sthiti or Staya means to be there. He is placed. He is in that place. Okay. Adhika means he is placed at a higher level. Yeah. So he is placed at this higher level. So when you use this Adhishtaya there, then it becomes important, because Vyasa or Krishna need not have used Adhishtaya. They could have said that Ashritaya. So they could have just used Ashritya. If you say Ashritya, it would just mean Jiva is there in this cave and it is experiencing through its gross body the external interaction. But what here Vyasa has used is this word Adhikastaya. So it is not just this Jiva, there is this guy who is sitting here, who is Adhika Atma, who is in that heart cave at a higher pedestal. He is there at a higher pedestal. To remind us of that, he is saying Adhishtaya or Adhikastaya. So what does this Brahman do? This is interesting, and I am hoping that this will elicit some discussions here. So this Jiva is there in the cave, in the Hridaya Kamala, the Jiva is there, but inside this Jiva, placed at a higher platform, is this Adhika Atma. So that is what Vyasa is saying here by using the word Adhishtaya. Okay. Now, why is that? Look at the next word. The next word is Ayam. Yeah. So what does Ayam stand for in Sanskrit? So can I have some contribution from those who are doing Sanskrit classes, please? So that you would have come across as Aham, Tvam, Ahaha, Ayam, Vayam, all those things. So here, what does Ayam actually stand for? Who is going to contribute? Okay, so there is eerie silence here. So okay.
I am is self, isn't it? Self.
That is I am in English, sir. I-A-M. That is I am. But in Sanskrit, what is I am? So your I am is aham. What you are saying, Sudarshan, is aham. I am means aham. Yeah, but here it is I am. Sorry, Sushrut, you were saying something.
Isn't I am another name for God?
Aham is another name for God. You're right. So I am. What is literal? So let us talk. I wouldn't say ordinary Sanskrit, but Sanskrit.
As ordinary Sanskrit, it is as well.
Okay, right.
Is it not this? I am means this, right?
Yes, correct. Sriram is correct on that. I am is that in front of us. Yeah. So that thing in front of us is called I am. This. Yeah. So in Sanskrit, for example, you will see I am idam. Idam means idu. Idu you say idu in Kannada, idu in Tamil. So idam means that you put a finger and say idam. Okay. Or you can also say I am. I am also means that he or that in front of me. Okay, is also called I am. Asau, for example, Asau Adityaha. So when it says Asau means that you see that is very far away is called Asau. Whereas I am is that in front of us. Then there is this thing called Etad. Etad is, yes, it may be in front of us. If it is very closely in front of us, you will say Etad. So this is the beauty of Sanskrit, where with different words, you can actually give different meanings to it. Whereas in English, it will be just this or that, and that's it. You will not get any further meanings. But in Sanskrit, you can use those complex words to grasp more meaning. So here, I am means that which is in front of us. Okay, so if you look at this Atma and Adhika Atma, and from an Atma's perspective, what is in front of it? What is it? It is what is there in front of it? It is this Adhika Atma that is in front of it. Okay, so there is another clue here that I am is that with this which is in front of the Jiva is Brahman, who is Adhishtaya, who is placed at a higher platform. And then what it says next is Vishayan Upasevate. Okay, here again there is a discussion. Vyasa or Krishna did not have put that Upasarga of Upa. So you see, Upa Sevate. Yeah, can you see that word? Upa Sevate. You could have just said Sevate. Vishayan Sevate. It is fine. So you don't need to have Adhishta, you can say Ashritya. So the words could have been Shrotram Chakshuhu, Sparshanam cha Rasanam Granam Yevacha, Ashritya, Manascha, I am Vishayan Sevate. It could have been like that. Then if you look at it from that perspective, there will be no problems of it explaining only the Jivas. But here, you need to look at some deeper and more enriched philosophy here. Jiva is fine. Yes, of course, we all know Jiva is there and he is in contact with the sense organs and he is doing it. But that is not the purpose of the Purushottama Yoga. The Purushottama Yoga's purpose is to tell us what is Brahman Swarupa in this? What on earth is this fellow doing there, sitting inside? What is his role? Is what the question here is. So for that, the last word gives us a clue. It says Upa Sevate. So again, we have to split the Upa Sevate. Upa Sevate means Upa and Sevate. Upa means two. It can either be Upari or it's another word called Upasarjana. Okay. Upari means what? That which is high. So this Brahman who is there in the heart's cave, who is in front of the Jiva, also enjoys the contact that the Jiva has with its gross body, with the external sense objects. But he has that enjoyment at a higher level. Upari Sevate. He absorbs and takes it at a higher platform. Whereas the Jiva, if you take this verse to imply the Jiva, there the Upasevate becomes what is called as Upasarjana Sevate, which means subordinate. Upasarjana means somebody who is an assistant or somebody who is a subordinate. So that again gives you an idea of the dependence of the soul. So the souls, yes, they also do Upasevate as a Upasarjana Sevate under the control of the Supreme. So that is the sequence of philosophy that goes here, because as I said last week, these verses are the essence of Keno Upanishad. Yeah, and we recited the Keno Upanishad. We said the very first verse, it is a dialogue between Shiva and Chaturmukha Brahma, and read Keno Upanishad, also called Talavakara Upanishad. It is part of Samaveda. There are two Upanishads in Samaveda that are important. One is Chandogya Upanishad, which is very big. Talavakara Upanishad is not small as Ishavasya Upanishad, but it's a substantial piece of work. So Keno Upanishad says, Keneshitam patati preshitam manaha, the same manaha. How does this mind work? Does the Jiva control the mind, or how does it work? Keneshitam, Kena pranaha pratamaha praiti yuktaha, knows is where the breathing is happening. How is that breathing, the prana, apana, vyana, how is that process happening? Keneshitam vacham imam vadanti, how does the mouth speak? Chakshuhu Shrotram Kavudevo Yunakti. How does this eye work? How does this ears work? Is the Shiva asking the Chaturmukha. And then, as you know, Chaturmukha says, these sense organs are not working just because they are there or just because the Jiva is sitting inside. What it says is, what he says, Chaturmukha says, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manasa Mano Yad Vachaha Vacham Savu Pranasya Pranaha Chakshushascha Chakshur Atimucha Diraha Pretya Asmat Lokad Amruta Bhavanti. First two words summarizes the whole philosophy of Kena Upanishad. And this is what we need to apply when we are looking at these verses in chapter 15. So those indriyas that are all there from the Kena Upanishad, we understand they are all working. The eyes is working not because the eyes is there. No, there is a Surya Namaka Paramatma who is there. Inside somebody else who is making it work. The ears work because a God is there who makes the ear work, so that we can perceive and hear sounds. We perceive sounds not because we are independently able to do it. It is because God has made it so that he has allowed us to perceive the sound. So that is the way of accepting the philosophy of Kena Upanishad. So if you apply that, this verse opens up entirely differently. It gives you a brand new perspective as to the Swarupa of Brahman is being discussed in this verse, and immediately you understand, I am now talking to you not because me as a Jiva is actually talking to you. I am talking to you because the Supreme Being who is behind me has made it so that he has made my Jiva to do this act, and that is the reason why I am doing this action of giving you an idea about this verse. So that is what our Vedic rishis want us to think about when we do whatever we do in our life, that there is a Supreme Being behind us who is doing it. Okay, so that is the beauty of these words, Adhishtaya, Ayam, and upasevate. So you can take it, this verse, to mean for jiva. Yes, correct. Jiva is there in this body. He is using these sense organs and he is enjoying the sense objects. That is at a upasarjana level or the subordinate level. But this adhishtaya, ayam, he is also there in this jiva, and he is doing this work at a higher level, and that is the reason why the jivas are able to do this. Okay, so that is one idea that I want you to take. You will not find them in books of translations and so on, and that's the reason why it's important. And I come back to it again. Try and go back to the acharyas, go to Shankara Bhashya, go to Ramanujacharya's Bhashya, go to Madhva's Bhashya, and go to the original Bhashyas, and try to grasp these ideas, because that is where you will find these ideas coming, these philosophical thoughts coming, and not in the modern day translations that I have also done some reference. But I just hope that by giving you this new perspective, you're able to grasp additional ideas. As we said before, Gita has at least 10 meanings, at least 10. It doesn't stop at 10. There are at least 10 meanings, and I'm giving you one of those meanings here as to how you can approach this verse. Now look at the two other words. There is a word called cha, and there is a word eva. So here, if you look at granam, eva, cha. Okay. Look at cha here. There are three places where cha comes. Okay. Shrotram, chakshuhu, sparshanam, cha. Rasanam, granam, eva, cha. Adhishtaya, manascha, ayam vishayan upasevate. There are three places where you got cha. There's one place you got eva. Okay. Now there is philosophy behind that. Vyasa has not just put this randomly, or Krishna is not saying randomly, because the word cha has got a meaning. The word eva has got a meaning. For example, the word eva, there are two ways. If eva comes at the beginning of the sentence, it is a sankhya, it means number one. If eva comes in the middle of a sentence, it implies importance, or the sense of importance. Only is a good translation for this. It's only for that. So that kind of importance. So those are all the subtle meanings in Sanskrit that you need to take on board. Now here, if you look at it, cha comes 3 times and only in 3 places. So let us take a colloquial meaning of cha. Cha means also. Yeah? It can be and or also. Yeah. So that is the meaning of cha. So here there are 6 things that he has mentioned. Shrotram, chakshuhu, sparshanam. He should have used cha for everything. Shrotram cha, chakshushu cha, sparshanam cha, rasanam cha, granam cha, adhishtaya, manascha. So he should have used 6 chas, but he have used only 3 chas. Why? There is a reason for that. And he has used it only in 3 places, but not in 3 places. Now, there are also other meanings for cha. It could mean inferiority or superiority as well. So what Neetaji was mentioning about becomes important for these interpretations at this level. Because as Neetaji mentioned, this is a sequence that is given at a practical level of how humans interact with the external world. As Neetaji said, when we see a mobile phone or when we see gulab jamun, first somebody says, look, there is gulab jamun in the kitchen. So then what you do, you go and look at the gulab jamun. Then as soon as you see the gulab jamun, you want to touch the gulab jamun. So that you touch the gulab jamuns, that is the most important thing that you have to do before even you eat it. First you see, first you hear, then you see, then you touch. Okay. So there one chakara comes there. So Vyasa puts a chakara there to saying that sparshanam is an important contact that you have. So that gives a sense of superiority there. So now, once that contact has happened, then what you do, if you want to eat, if the gulab jamun is stale and it is smelly, will you eat it? No, you're not going to eat it. So that granam, yeah, granam becomes interesting. The smell that you get then is what will actually stimulate you to go and eat it. Rasanam, so then you pick up and then you eat and then you taste it. Yeah, so even that sequence. So after granam, he puts a cha, saying that granam is superior. It becomes important. Yeah, so that is the beauty of the cha there. And manascha is why he put another cha as an important, because all these indriyas, they send their information to the manas. Manas is the pradhana indriya. It is the most important indriyas that we have. To bring home that message of the importance of the mind, he puts another cha. Now the eva there, for example, only, so the way you have to take that eva is you have to place it next to adhishtaya eva. Okay, so there, when I said adhishtaya, I spoke about the supreme being who is there. Actually, it is adhishtaya eva. He is the only guy who's sitting there, who's making all these things happen. Now, Eva, for example, is a name of the Supreme. Vedas describe Eva as a name of God. Eva is a name of Vishnu. Eva, what is the etymology of Eva? A, E, and Va. A means nirdosha. Nirdosha means A. A means you've done this. Neti, neti, atma. So A, he's not this, he's not that, he doesn't have any defects and so on. That is the meaning of A. E is jnana. Vam is ananda. So that eva word, besides giving an idea of how important it is actually a name of the Supreme Being, because he is Jnananandamaya. Yeah, he is Jnananandamaya. That Jnananandamaya is sitting there, adhishtayaiva, and he is also upasevate. Okay, he is also enjoying that interaction that jiva is having with the external world. Okay, now again, hold on to that thought, because now it should create some doubts in you. Now, before we go into that, why you should create a doubt. Now, I also have told you before, when you look at Gita verses, like you look any Upanishad, you have to say what is Adi Bhuta, what is Adi Atma, and what is Adi Deva interpretation. So when you look at the Adi Deva interpretation here, that is the Abhimani Devatas. How do I interpret this? Shrotram, sorry, what happened there? So Shrotram, Chakshuhu, Sparshanam, Cha, Rasanam, Granam, Evacha. All these names are the names of certain deities of the Vedic pantheon. Shrotram, hearing. Okay, Shrotra. Who is the Abhimani deity of the Shrotra? If you go to the Vedas, Chandra, Soma, Mitra, Yama. Similarly, I've listed that for you. Tvag is Kubera, Pradhana Vayu, Chakshus, Surya, Rasana is Varuna, Grahana is Ashwini twins. And again, the nose has got two holes there. And our Vedic rishis said there are twins who are controlling that. So they're called the Ashwini twins. Yeah. So even for Tanmatras, you have all these deities. So it's really interesting looking at it from an Adi Deva perspective, because the philosophy there is we have our eyes. But our eyes work not because we have a retina, but the philosophy there is our retina works because there is Surya, who is the Abhimani Devata of our eyes, who's actually sitting there. Inside the Surya is the Antaryami Vishnu, who is sitting there. And these guys make the eyes work properly so that the Jiva who is sitting there is then able to see things through the eyes. So that is the contemplation that our rishis want us to do, implying that every stage of whatever we do in life, somehow our rishis have to bring the Supreme Being into the equation, and that is how they bring it as the cosmic Antaryamin. So Adhishtaya, so even in Surya Devata, this Antaryamin is there as Adhishtaya, and he also, not only the Surya enjoys the external objects, inside Surya, the Supreme is there, he is also enjoying the external objects, and the philosophy goes. So again, I want to introduce that idea that Adi Deva interpretation also you need to try and adopt in your understanding of the Gitas, then it becomes complete or full. So you have Adi Bhuta, Adi Deva, and Adi Atma interpretation. So I've given you all the three hints of all the three interpretations looking at this verse. Now let's move on. Now, so in our body then, all these Abhimani Devatas are all residing in various places, and I've listed all them, and I've told you about Adi Atma. There is another Adi Deva interpretation of this, and we have done this in Purushottama when we said Saptasyasan Paridayaha Trishapta Samidaha Krutaha Deva Yadyajnam Tanvanaha Abadnan Purusham Pashun. We did that amazing verse of Purushottama, how this cosmic creation happens. The Adi Devas, what do all these Devatas do? Now, what the Devatas do in Brahmanda, they do the same thing in your Pindanda. That is the philosophy there of pushing it to the Pringana. So the macrocosm is the same as the microcosm. So all these devatas who do the cosmic yagnas of creation as a celebration and worship of the Supreme, the same thing they are doing in your body, in your various parts of your body, and they all have individual portfolios, and they do these various sacrifice, the cosmic sacrifice, and that sacrifice or yagna in your own body. Okay, so this is the deep philosophy there of how our body itself is a kunda, and whatever things that we do is a sacrifice, is a yajna. So when you look at this Shrotram Chakshus verse, then we have a question: how is this related to the yajnas that we do outside? Say, for example, I put a question there. Why do we do fire sacrifice? Why do we have to use fire? Why not have water and put ahuti in a water? Or why don't we just have an empty vessel with just space in it and put into that? Why do we use fire, and why do we do fire sacrifice in various forms? Of course, we don't do elaborate fire sacrifices these days, but when you go to the temples, or when you go to your local temple and do havans, you do the fire sacrifice. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and I want to open it for discussion as to why do we do fire sacrifice? Volunteers, please.
My opinion is, Madhuji, I think it burns all the, whatever has to be burnt. And Swaha Devi takes it to the gods, whomever we are offering, the essence of it.
Yeah. So what
And
essence?
the Bhautika way, we burn all the doshas we have in this Agni.
So what from essence, what do you mean, Sheilaji? What essence? So for example, let me give an example. So you put some grains as ahuti into the fire. Yeah. Now this fellow who is Brahman, or whoever this yajna has been done, does Vishnu really need your ghee? Does he really need your food? Does he really need your milk and curds? Does he really need your ghee? Does he need all these oshadis to be
I
put?
heard that
Vanaspati?
it purifies the universe. The cosmic, universe.
Yeah.
It goes into the air and it purifies the whole environment.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I agree. Yes, that is one theory, that it's one scientific theory that's put forward, saying that the vapors that come out from burning this is actually very good. Today, somebody had sent me a text saying that apparently when you do an yajna, it emits peroxylin. It emits. Is it my sister who sent this? Saying that it emits peroxylin gas. Peroxylin gas is good for bringing in rain. So there is those kind of views that are there. I agree. Yeah, that is true. Anything else as to why we do fire sacrifice?
Maybe it's the only one which is cannot be polluted.
Thanks, Venkat. Yeah. Anybody else?
Madhu,
Hey,
Suresh,
Yeah, Suresh. Yeah.
sorry, maybe it is an offering to the Agni Narayana, and it is the like you quoted the Purushottama slok. It is offering oneself. Brahma himself offered there his own body, his own self.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So it's an offering. It's our emotional offering of surrender and sacrifice to the Supreme. Is that what I got from what you've said, Suresh?
yes, Madhu. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? I thought somebody else wanted.
And yeah, Madhusudan, this is Harish. The one I had heard is that Agni is also, he plays the role of the messenger. So he's the one that actually takes your offering and offers it to the Lord on your behalf.
Yeah, thank you, Harish. That's very nice. Agni is that intermediary. He is that messenger between the material world and the non-material world, where whatever you're offering, that he passes on to the non-material platform, to the Supreme. The Agni then gives it to Agni Narayana. So that is one profound interpretation of that. So Harish, I want to ask, what is it that is being passed on to the Supreme by Agni? What is he passing on? Because you have poured the stuff, it is burnt, it has become an ash. So what is it that is going to the non-material world? What is Agni taking from us?
I would assume that it is the more subtle form of whatever that you've offered. So perhaps it is the bhava or the others, subtler forms.
Yeah, thank you, Harish.
Don't know beyond that.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful. Yeah. So
Does it
I
come
think
in the sloka Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi? I mean,
yes, you're right. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmatno, Brahmana Hutam, Brahmaivadena. Yes, that verse is reminding you of that. Thank you, Shilaji. Yeah, so that spirit of your bhava and your dedication and your affection, your reverence, those are all the subtle forms of food that is being spoken here. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad about this. I've got a slide coming up on that. Now, the reason why I have brought this Agni sacrifice here is your contact, the philosophical view of your indriyas and your objects of the indriyas. Yeah. So the Rishi takes that approach. He takes your indriya is the kunda. Okay. And your arthas, that is your objects that you see, are the ones that you pour into this kunda. Yeah. So your eyes is the kunda on which the rupa or the what you see in this world is poured into it as an ahuti. So each contact between your indriya and indriya object itself is a fire sacrifice, and it is a dedication of all the things that you're seeing in this world as a dedication to the Supreme. Because unless he was making it happen, it would not be that way. So you're actually offering yourself. Yeah. So that is one concept that comes here of actually offering yourself, that is your arthas, into the indriyas as a cosmic sacrifice, and that goes on at various levels. Then your own body becomes a sacrifice, and we got verses coming later that talk about it, Vaishwanaraha and all that. So then it builds up on this idea. So I'm going to introduce this here. We take it to the next class and discuss this further. But this contact between indriya and indriya objects itself is a sacrifice. Our rishis want us to look at it like this. Yeah. Now the reason why that is important, and I want to hold on to Harish's thought there of actually saying it is our bhava, or it is our spirit of dedication and surrender that we are doing here by doing all our affairs in our lives, because it will all fall into place when we think about this grand visions of karma yoga and all that. These concepts will actually add on to our perception of what that actually means. So next slide, I've got a complicated slide, but this is an interesting slide. So I want to start from the Mundaka Upanishad, which we have already said. So Harish essentially said that this is supreme person will actually, Agni will actually be that messenger. You pour things up, and then Agni is that intermediary, and he takes this to the supreme God. Okay. Now here is a verse for you, Harish. First verse of in the third adhyaya. Dvasuparna sayuja sakaya samana vriksham parishashva jate tayor anyaha pipalam swadvati anashnan anyaha abhichakashiti. So what that says, we have done it millions of times now. This verse basically says there are two birds, and this fellow is actually eating these fruits in this banyan tree, and he's enjoying those fruits, saying that this is very beautiful. Okay, whereas this guy here, the Adhika Atma, is the other bird. He is Anashnan. Anashnan means he is not eating anything. He is just saying Abhichakashiti. He is still very active, but he is looking at this second fellow. What is this guy doing? But he is not eating it. So this verse saying that the Supreme Person is a silent witness. Whatever you are doing, he just lets you do, but he is just a silent witness. So when you look at this verse, he doesn't tell you that he actually, when you give your ahutis, he is actually eating it. Okay, so this is one problem there, because there the Supreme Being has said he is Anashnan. Anashnan means, Anashana means somebody who doesn't eat or somebody who doesn't enjoy. But then look at the internal evidence in Gita. There are so many internal verses. Aham hi sarva yajnana bhokta cha prabhurevacha. Okay, bhokta. Bhokta means I am the enjoyer of all the sacrifices, including the sacrifice of your indriyas and your indriya arthas. Even that sacrifice, I am the one who is the bhokta, I am the enjoyer. Look at the famous verse in 26, chapter 9, 26. Okay, let's get somebody to recite this because they're so beautiful verses. 9:26 and 5:29, please. Can I have a volunteer to recite this?
Shall I read it, Madhuji?
Please, Sheila ji,
9:24 as well.
yes, please, yeah.
Aham hi sarvayajnanam bhokta cha prabhurev cha na tu mam abhijananti tatvena taschavanti te patpam pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmanah भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति.
Thank you, Sheila ji. So in all these three key verses, Gita says, I am the supreme enjoyer. Whatever contact with Indriya and Indriya objects that you have, whatever you think you're enjoying, I am the supreme enjoyer. I am actually enjoying it. Okay, three verses. But Mundaka Upanishad has said, Anashnan, I don't eat anything. Okay, so here you have, then you have Ashnan. So Ashnan means eating, and that is the same as Bhokta, somebody who is enjoying it. In Katha Upanishad, there is a very similar but very important verse called Ritam Pibandau Sukrutasya Loke Guham Pravishta Parame Pararde Chaya Tapo Brahmavido Vadanti Panchagnyo Yecha Tri Nachiketaha. So he teaches the Panchagni Vidya in that particular Upanishad where he says Ritam Pibantau, that supreme being. Pibantau again means he accepts, he enjoys, he eats, he drinks, and all that. So you have this what appears to be contradictory verses. On the one hand, it says this Adhikatma is a silent witness, whereas in these verses it says this guy, Katha Upanishad, is the opposite of what Mundaka appears to be. What Mundaka Upanishad is saying, that this guy does not enjoy anything in this whole transactions between Indriya and Indriya objects. So this is where this verse, this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad verse in 4th Adhyaya actually confirms, it gives us the evidence that when we do our yajna sacrifice, or when you do your puja at home, and the people would have asked you, why are you doing naivedya, putting fruits, flowers, and still that fellow doesn't need anything. Why do you want to do that and waste your time? Give it to some poor person and feed them. Why do you want to give this naivedya and stuff? How do you answer that? Yes, giving to the poor person is a good thing and the right thing to do, but at the same time, you need to offer what you do in your life. Why? Why do we have to do offerings in naivedya or in yajna sacrifices? Brihadaranyaka Upanishad basically says what Harish has actually alluded to. So it says, Tasmad Esha Pravivikta Aharatara Iva Eva Bhavati Asmat Sharirat Atmanaha. Okay, beautiful verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that actually gives you that spirit as to why, how this happens. Tasmad, Eshaha means, supreme. Pravivikta Ahara Tara, that means subtle form of food. Pravivikta Ahara Tara means supreme type of subtle food that he accepts. So what is that supreme type of higher food that he accepts when you do your ahuti is that the devotion, that dedication, that love, that is the food for him. He doesn't need your material, apple or grapes. He needs that bhava and your spirit. That is the food for him, and he likes it. Yeah, so Padma Purana, for example, says, so when you say that he accepts that in the spirit, what does he accept? What is that bhokta? What is that supreme enjoyer? What does he enjoy that? Actually, what is it that the Gita is coming to it? For that, you have to go to Padma Purana to find the evidence. There he clearly, Padma Purana says, Shubham pibantau asau nityam, na shubham sa harihi pibet. That means, so this is interesting for you to think about. You might consider the supreme guy is he's very clever, because what he says is, when the jivatma does good deeds and good palas that he does, what the supreme being does, it seems that he will let the jivatma enjoy those good things, but also he will take a portion of that and he will also enjoy that. He will enjoy whatever good deeds that the Supreme Being is doing. So what does this good deeds means? Good deeds means nishkama karma. Okay, without any benefits doing stuff. When the jiva does that, and that is a good act for the jiva, and the benefits that the jiva comes, he accepts that and he is very happy. But when the jiva does bad activities, he says, fellow, this is your problem. When you do bad activity, you keep to yourself. Your karma lepa will happen. You will have your karma imprints and you will go through and suffering. That is for you. But when you do nishkama karma yoga, I will enjoy that. So that is the essence of that verse. So now you might ask, what is it? How is it relevant to all this? Because it is relevant to this verse, I've taken this because when I say Shrotram Chakshuhu Sparshanam Charasanam Granam Evacha Adhishtaya Manashtayam Vishayan Upasevate means God accepts these things. That is the essence of this verse. So you have to keep all other evidences that are given to understand what is this verse getting at, saying that he is the supreme independent enjoyer of everything. Because he is a supreme independent enjoyer, we are able to enjoy a few things in our lives. Okay, and that is his swarupa. That is how he operates this stuff in this universe. Okay, yeah. So sorry, Veena, do you want to mute your audio, please? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So the next verse, let's see if you have 10 minutes to finish this. Next verse is amazing verse again. So then he goes back. So now I've given you, hopefully in the previous verse, I've given you this whole Adi Bhuta, Adi Deva, Adi Atma interpretation, and I have also given you an idea. When we say that the God enjoys things, even our sense things that we do, God enjoys means that he enjoys the higher aspects of it. He enjoys the subtler aspects of it. Okay. Now he kind of brings back to us and again reminds us again, the reason being, so you are saying that this God does all this, he brings the jivas down, he takes them upwards, and then he makes them do all these function. Then the question is, but why are we not able to see all this? Yeah, why do we not perceive it in our day-to-day life that these are all the things that is going on in the background when I want to buy that mobile phone, that all these activities are growing? So Krishna in the 10th verse, he basically handles that. He says, Utkramantam stitam va api bunjanam va gunanvitam vimudaha na anupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. So I'm hoping to do 2 slides of this and then we'll continue it next week. So Utkramantam, you know what Utkramantam is. Utkramantam is when the jivas go up. Utkramati goes up. Okay, Sthitam means it comes down. So if you look at that, so we know that God takes the jivas upwards and he also brings downwards. He's reminding of that here, but he's also telling us something else. When Utkramantam happens, it means it is death. When Sthitam means they've come on, the jiva has been brought into a body, which means birth. And then Sthitam means they are living in this growth body. So death and birth, they are also the sequences, Utkramantam and Sthitam. So when this jiva is in that Sthita, when it is here, what is it doing? Bunjanam. Bunjana means it is enjoying the external world and whatever transactions it's doing. And also so Supreme Being is also enjoying it. So that idea he brings back again. But there is also another philosophy there, because when the jiva is in the sthita, it is in 3 states of consciousness, as you know, and we have dealt with this before again from Mundaka Upanishad. So you have the Jagrati Sthana, you have the Sushupti Sthana, and you also have your Swapna Sthana, which is in between. Yeah. So when you look at Jagrati Sthana, it is awake. Yeah. And in the Swapna Sthana, it is in dream state. And in a Sushupti Sthana, it is in deep sleep. So how does it work? How does those states of consciousness work for the jiva? Jiva is always stationed in the heart, in the cave. But the Mundaka Upanishad, what it states is, this Paramatman moves to 3 stations and he comes down. He goes up and he comes down. So when he goes up to the Agna Chakra, that is when the Jagrati state is. That is when the jiva is doing its activity. When it comes to Vishuddha Chakra, where the thyroid gland is, it is in the dream state. And then when it comes to Sushupti, where it is in close the Jiva and Brahman are very closely bound together. That is the Sthita state. That state is the Sushupti state. So again, in our everyday life, when we wake up and we go to sleep, we go to these positions, Utkramantam, Sthitam. When we are in Utkramantam, we are doing activities in our daily work. And when we are in a dream state between 10 to 12 in the night, we are in that, still in that Utkramantam. But when we are in Sushupti, we have come down to the heart. The Paramatma has come down to the heart. So again, the Jiva's activities also are doing Utkramantam and Sthitam. Yeah. And again, in all these three stages, the Paramatman is there and he is enjoying the good things that the Jiva is doing, but gives all the dukkhas and everything to the Jivas. Yeah. Whereas in the Sushupti state, the verse says Gunan Vitam. Okay. So Gunan Vitam Bunjanam is a complicated verse. Gunan Vitam means, Gunan means the Sreshta ones, the ones that are very good. That is Gunan. Yeah. Dosha and Guna are opposite of each other. Guna means not the three Sattva, Rajas and Tamo Gunas. Guna means auspicious things. So Gunan Vitam Bunjanam. So this supreme being, even in your daily transactions of waking, dream and dreamless sleep state, he is always enjoying the good aspects of you. He's always, why is that happening? Why is he always in the good state? Why is he always enjoying? I've given you a pictorial representation in the bottom here. There is a projector, there is a fellow who is projecting something on the screen, and then there is somebody who is seeing it. Okay. So let's take an example of a dream state. So this mind is the screen where something is being projected, and this Jiva is seeing this as a dream. Whereas the philosophy there is, it is the supreme being who is actually projecting this dream onto the screen called as the mind, using the subconscious memory that is there in the mind. That is the sequence. Now in this sequence, the projector is projecting the movie, the Jiva is seeing, but also the projector is seeing. So the projector operates, but he also sees, whereas Jiva doesn't operate. He cannot control his dream, but he sees. Again, when you look at this example, you will understand that in this dynamics, Jiva experiences and also the supreme being also experiences. So to say that this Jiva and supreme being are static, dormant entities who don't do anything doesn't fit into the proper sequence and the spirit of Gita verses. Both of them are dynamic entities, and the supreme being enjoys the higher. So Gunan Vita means Shubha Guna Bhoga. So again, as I said in Padma Puran, Shubham Pibantau Asau Nityam Na Ashubham Saharihi Pibet. Yeah. So he enjoys, that is his Swarupa. He allows you to do stuff. And when you do good karma yoga, he also relishes on, oh, how nice this Jiva is doing it. Okay, now we are coming to the almost the end of this today's talk. So now, as we said, Utkramantam Sthitam Vapi Bunjanam Va Gunanvitam Vimudaha. So you may say all these things are happening, but why am I not seeing all this? You are saying God is doing, making you have, awake. He is doing the dreams. He is giving you Ananda in Sushupti state. He is responsible for contact between the sense objects and so on. But why am I not seeing it? He describes those people who cannot see as Vimudaha. Muda means somebody who has moha. Moha means it's got various meaning. One is delusion, ignorance. Those are all comes under Muda. So one way of looking at it is he who has ayatartha jnana or viparita jnana. Ayatartha jnana means who has false knowledge or wrong knowledge. Yeah. Or who does not have any knowledge at all, or he had knowledge but he has forgotten it. So if you put all these things together, he becomes a Muda. Okay, that fellow, he who is an idiot, and note here again there is an upasarga here. He could have just said Muda, but he said Vimuda. Vimuda means he is the highest fool. He is the supreme-most idiot. A supreme-most idiot who has got ayatartha jnana and vipartirtha jnana will never know me, will never know my swarupa. He will never know how I operate in this world. So here he used vimudaha, whereas if you go to the 5th verse in the same chapter, he said gachanti amudaha. So amudaha means opposite of muda. Amudaha means he who is very intelligent. Whereas here he uses vimudaha, meaning he is the most idiot. The most idiot na anupashyanti. So again that becomes important. Pashyanti means sees or he knows. Anu, again he could have just said just pashyanti. Vimudaha na pashyanti, he could have said, but Vyasa uses the word anu. So that anu becomes important there. Anu pashyanti. Anu pashyanti means what? Anu means shastra anuguna, vastu sthiti anuguna. Shastra anuguna means knowledge gained through the study of the scriptures. With that knowledge, you have to know things. If you don't know, if you don't gain knowledge through the scriptures, you will never get this yathartha jnana. Okay. So that becomes very important of knowing about Shastras, because it is our Shastras that actually talk about all this. You will not find it in a university textbook. You will have to go through our scriptures to understand what our Rishi's opinion here is. What do they have? What have they seen in their deep meditation in the Vedas and documented in the Upanishads? We have to go and understand as how this is happening at a subtler level. Gross level, we all know that this is how it works, but at a subtler level, philosophical level, what it is, for which you need anupashyanti. If you don't do anupashyanti, you will be a vimuda, and if you are a vimuda, you will never understand these sequence of events. So who is it that he will know this? He says jnana chakshushaha pashyanti. So this becomes very interesting. He says the one who has jnana chakshuhu, he is the one who will understand my swarupa, and he will also understand how this world operates. So we all know chakshus means eyes. Yeah. So I just want to introduce this concept here. You will all be familiar, I'm sure. So the first eye for us is your material eye. The stula sharira has got eyes. This is this. So that is one eye. The second eye is the eye that is there in the linga sharira that we discussed last week. The third eye is the eye of the jiva swarupa. Your jiva itself has got an eye that is called jiva swarupa indriya. That is the third eye. Now I think you can understand where I am getting at. Hold on to that idea of the third eye. It comes in various philosophies from India about the third eye concept. Okay, so you have stula sharira, linga sharira, and the jiva swarupa, and the third eye is the jiva swarupa. Now the eyes of the stula sharira and linga sharira is the material eye. The material eye will never be able to see something that is non-material, which is Brahman. So to see Brahman, who is non-material, you need to have a non-material eye. So that is the eye of the Jiva Swarupa. And that is what Krishna is telling us here. Guys, you do your Anupashyanti, and when you do your Anupashyanti, that is, you do your scriptural studies, you will get Paroksha Jnana, you will get theoretical knowledge, then you apply and do your sadhanas, then you will reach a stage where you will be able to get the self-realization. Without self-realization, you cannot progress to God realization. So self-realization is fundamental. Unless you have your self-realization, you will never be able to adopt your Swarupa Indriya to see that fellow who is sitting next to you. Yeah. So that jnana chakshushaha is a very significant word in this particular verse, that basically telling that Swarupa, the eternal eye of the jiva, should see that supreme being. That is your goal. That is what you need to do. And that is why that makes sense that jnana chakshushaha pashyanti, because this jivatma is also jnanananda swarupa. This paramatma is also jnanananda swarupa. This fellow is infinite, this fellow is little bit. But this jnanananda swarupa only can see another jnanananda swarupa, and there is no way around this. So this is the philosophy behind this, the third eye concept of jnana chakshuhu. The jnana chakshuhu is the third eye. That is, there is a lot of imagery around this, and you will probably have more knowledge than me. So I'm going to pause there for a minute and see if people want to contribute about this third eye. Shiva is supposed to have a third eye, and actually all of us will also have the third eye. So is there any contributions that you would want to make at this stage?
Madhu Suresha, is it but like we discussed last time, when at the state when you discover yourself in your swarupa, that you are with your own self luminosity, that's the time that you see, that's the third eye that enables you to see Brahman.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Suresh. Yeah, absolutely right. So I was just hoping if anybody would have a view from Rudra and Rudra's third eye and what it means and so on. So maybe somebody could read about it and explain to us next week. Maybe we'll hold it on to the next week. So I'm coming to the final slide here. So now this is the Jnana Chakshusha. You need, as Suresh ji said, you need to have self-realization. And with that self-realization is the only mechanism by which you can know this big guy who's sitting next to you, who is making everything happen. So next verse, which we will deal in the next class, Krishna Veda Vyasa then says, but how do I open my third eye? How do I have to open my third eye? Just because I've read my book, just because I've opened a book and read something in Bhagavad Gita, does that mean the very next day my third eye is going to open and I'll realize all this Utkramantam Stitam and how this Bunjanam is happening and how how the Supreme has this subtle form of food, and how, will I know all those things? The guy, his Swarupa next to me. So immediately after saying Jnana Chakshushaha, Vyasa will then say, Yatantaha yoginashchayam pashyanti atmani avasthitam. Yatanto api akrita atmano na enam pashyanti achetasaha. And he takes this yatantaha. The very first word is highly significant as what that yatantaha means. And yatantaha means effort. That individual souls have to make that effort to reach their own self-realization. What that yatantaha is, how do we do it, and why it is important, and so on. We'll touch upon it next week, and then we'll progress on to verse 12. Every verse is amazing from now on, and hopefully we will spend one good, nice session before Gita Jayanti and the last 5 verses, which is the key 5 verses of chapter 15. So after talking about all these profound philosophies for 15 verses, Vyasa, Krishna then talks about from verse 16 to 20, the ultimate truths of Vedic philosophy, and we will finish that by the end of the month. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening. Krishna Pranamastu, and we will have any questions or discussions.
Madhuji, may I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
It's just that, the soul is the supreme control of intelligence, mind, and senses, like buddhi, mana, indriyani. But the soul, again, we have, like Brahman, we have to associate with ourselves with Brahman. So, in other words, basically what they're saying is, our indriyani senses, they will be doing something good if we associate ourselves. Is it leading to Advaita basically? Because all the good things which we do, the Supreme is also enjoying it. But when we do bad things, they go into as karma. So in other words, they're saying that we have to associate transcendent to like a higher. That's what this is that what the whole meaning is.
So Venkat, thanks for that question. I'm not very clear as to where you are leading us for this discussion, because as I said before, once the concept of enjoyer, once the concept of somebody assuming stuff, there itself you bring in a lot of difference. So unless there is a real object, unless there is a real jiva, unless there is a real Brahman, this whole discussion becomes useless. So first thing there is, to have this discussion about Gita, you need to accept that these entities actually exist. They really exist. If they really do not exist, then having this discussion becomes fruitless. So I have some, I stand to be corrected, but I'm not convinced that the flow of thought of chapter 15 can actually go with the flow of thought of Advaita, for the primary reason that Brahman of Advaita is nir-akara, nirguna, nirvishesha, nirkrama, nirbhoga, entity. So when that is the fundamental definition, that entity can never be an enjoyer at all. So that is the problem with Nirguna Brahman concept to come here. So I think we should park it there. So I haven't quite, maybe it is my fault, I haven't quite grasped this. So your question, when I say the Supreme is also an enjoyer, there you have to accept, number one, the Supreme is a dynamic entity, that the Supreme does a lot of activity. The Supreme is an enjoyer. In Advaita, the Supreme is none of these. So that is problematic. But what I actually mean is that the God, the Supreme Being, allows the Jiva to enjoy, and also he also accepts the good things that the Jivas do and he appreciates them. He is Aptakama. He doesn't need anything for him. He is infinite. He is always fully Aptakama, as we call it. He is already in infinite bliss. He doesn't need the enjoyment of the Jivas to increase his blissfulness. He is always infinitely blissful, but he appreciates what the Jiva does. And that is the spirit of these verses. I hope I was able to explain this to you. Thank you.
Madhu, Suresha, just a
Yeah.
question. We know that all the Indriyabhimani devatas are under the direct control of the Paramatma, be it for Jnanendriyas or Karmendriyas. While we get a reference about Jnanendriyas in this chapter, there's no reference to Karmendriyas at all. Is there anything to read on that? As I mean, anything to take away from that? Or I was just wondering as to why there's no mention at all about the Karmendriyas.
Yeah, good thought, Suresh. There is not much of mention here, but actually in Upanishads is full of that. So the six that is listed here is all these Indriyas, and then Manas is included here. But as if you go to other Upanishads, if you go to Chandogya Upanishad, it will say Shrotram Chakshus Prano Vak Manaha. Yeah, so there prana will come and vak comes up. So vak is a karma indriya. Yeah, pranaha is this breathing activity. So different Upanishads take different things in certain concept, in certain settings. But my take on that is that for the discussions here, we are talking about how this pindanda is working and how this contact with sense organs are working. You can certainly, as we have all discussed, Gita can be interpreted from so many angles. So you can do what's called upalakshana. So you know upalakshana, right? What upalakshana means, that you apply what you've applied here to other aspects. So it is perfectly fine if you also take your karma indriya and you say pani and padam, and then you say pani and padam, you have abhimani devatas of pani and padam. Pani abhimani devata for hand is I'll leave it to you unless you want to answer that question. So hand is in sorry Suresh, you want to say?
No, it's a hand is Indra, right? So
Correct, yeah. A hand is Indra, and then legs is the Abhimani Devata. For leg is Jayanta, who's Indra's son. So that is how the philosophy is. So you can do Upalakshana and apply it elsewhere. But I thought these five Jnana Indriyas are given because that is how it is an inward journey, right? The Jnana Indriyas is all about inside, whereas Karma Indriyas is all about from inside to outside. So he's asking us to go inwards and do this exploration is how I read it. But it's a good question. I'll also try and find out as to why Karma Indriya is not given here. Whereas in Chandogya, Prana and Vak are the six where the Karma Indriyas is listed. Thanks, Suresh.
Madhu, can I ask a question? Sorry, somebody else's.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, they will go ahead. Yeah.
And so does the Supreme enjoy the bad deeds as well as the good deeds?
That's what the scriptures are saying that. Yeah. So he said, what is a bad deed? So you have to define what is a bad deed. What is a bad deed? They will.
Well, he's listed all these 20-point program. Anything that is not in the 20-point program is a bad deed, according to me.
Yeah, fine. But even more basic, what is a more fundamental bad deed? So the fundamental bad deed is what is being discussed, as you know, in the second half of chapter 2. And after that, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, all this karma yoga and everything else that is discussed in Gita, that karma, so your first thing will be nishkama karma and sakama karma. So anything that you do sakama karma is a bad deed. So that bad deed, that sakama karma that you do, assuming that you are doing this action and that you want a particular benefit for this action, then that binds you. So that deed, Krishna is very, very clever. He said, mate, that is your problem. If you want to do with sakama karma, which is the bad deed's primary definition, you enjoy. You go through the cycles of birth and death and you enjoy. But you know what? If you do nishkama karma, which is the good deed, I will also appreciate it. I will appreciate it. I will also enjoy what you are enjoying. I am apta karma. I don't need anything specific from you. But in the spirit of appreciating what you're doing, I will also enjoy that. And that is the pravivikta tara. Pravivikta ahara tara that Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about. That is the subtle form of food that he enjoys. So that is where the difference is. So he doesn't take sakama karma is for you, Deval. Nishkama karma, he will give the portion to you for your benefit, but he will appreciate and enjoy that.
Okay. This is hard. Yeah. Okay.
Suresh, no, Sushruth had a question, I think, or Harish, yeah.
Harish, hi, Madhusudan. So this point on Jnana Chakshu, so I know in the Shaiva Siddhanta, there's this belief that, there's the third eye that, that actually exists in everybody. It's just that, it's not activated. Now, is that something that is endorsed in Vedanta, or does Vedanta have a point of view on that point?
Yeah, so very nice question, Harish. The third eye is the Jiva Swarupa Indriya. So in Vedanta, the Jiva Swarupa Indriya is the third eye, which is not activated. All of us have the third eye, which is a Jiva Swarupa Indriya, which has not been activated because we have not done our sadhanas. And we do our sadhanas and then we get his grace. Without his grace, it's not going to happen. So even the opening of the third eye, ultimately the opening of the third eye has to be from his grace. So I got this last verse in Katha Upanishad in this slide. Na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha na medaya na bahuna shrutena. Yam yevesha vrunute tena labhyaha tasya esha atma vivrunute tanun swam. If he decides that I want to open Harish's third eye because he has done a lot of sadhanas, he will do it one day and you will see it.
Okay. So it can happen either by God himself or an avatar, potentially.
Somebody has to put that grace onto you. That grace has to come from the Supreme, and that Supreme is next to you. Bimbarupa is sitting next to you, and we have said you don't need some guy Rama or Krishna to take an avatar and give you the third eye. There is this Bimbarupa who is sitting inside you itself. So the sequence, as you know, is you have to first turn yourself and look at him first. That is the aparoksha jnana state. Once you have seen him, then he gives his grace. Then you go to moksha. But to see him also, he needs grace. He should say, okay, I'll show myself to you now. Until that point happens, it's not going to happen. How is it going to happen? You have to move him. You have to influence him to say, please show me yourself. And for that, you have to do eons and eons of work. One day he may say, okay, Harish, you're good. Let me show myself. So there also, he is going to do your grace to show himself. And he's also going to do his grace to take you to moksha.
And that same concept is what's being referred to here, right? You called it the Swarupa Indriya. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. The third eye is the Swarupa Indriya.
Got it. Thanks.
Madhu, one question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So you mentioned in the Rasanam and Granam, the order, if something doesn't smell good, you're not going to taste it. So why is Rasanam before Granam?
No, the idea there is it is Rasanam, and then after Granam there is a cha. So sorry, I didn't make myself clear there. So the significance of having cha there. So we were talking about why cha is not there after Rasanam, but cha has been put only after Granam, because Granam is important in that sequence, and that is why he has put it there. The cha, we are more focused on the cha there. I see where you're coming from. He could have put Granam cha Rasanam. He could have put it there.
Yeah.
Correct. don't know. Maybe when Veda Vyasa comes here or when we go to Badri, we can ask him.
And just to add to that third eye, I just wonder in all the pictorial depictions, it says if the third eye opens, there is fire and it burns everything. So does it burn your worldly attachments and liberates you?
Yeah, absolutely. In Krishna itself, there is a verse, isn't it? Perhaps Shilaji could remind us of that verse. It says, Basmatat Kurute. Jnana Yagnena Basmasat Kurute. So Jnana, this knowledge, the light of knowledge will burn. Burn what? All your karmas.
Yeah, thank you.
Madhu.
Is that why it is said Yajnartat Karmam Kuru?
Yes.
Third chapter, 9th verse, Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, third verse. Yeah. Third chapter. Which was Shilaji?
Yajnartat.
9th verse.
Yajnartat Karmani Yatra Tadartam Yajna. I don't remember now.
Yeah, okay. We'll maybe take it up next week. Yeah.
Madhu,
thanks.
Whatever you said today, is it the concept to explain the prasad system as well? Why you offer prasad to God and then eat the prasad?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely, Sudarshan. When you do Naivedya and when you do Prasadam, and then you accept with the whole idea of Prasadam, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati, he says he'll accept it, and then you can enjoy and you can eat it. But what he's accepting there is that your love and devotion is what that he takes as his food. So the Prasadams, the spirit of Prasadam is that whatever you eat, you offer it to him and say, like, look, whatever I have done, whatever money I've earned, and because of that I bought this, and because of that I made this food, everything is possible because you have made it so, and I am dedicated what you have given me to you first, and then I will take that, because that is the spirit of surrender, of actually thanking the Supreme for whatever he has allowed us to do. So that is that spirit of prasadam. So when you do that, the food becomes auspicious. When you say that, it doesn't suddenly become more tastier. It just becomes auspicious because you have actually surrendered, and the Vedas say that the Supreme Being accepts that. He accepts that as a good deed because you have surrendered yourself there and you're given that spirit. That is my understanding of the prasadam concept. Anybody else wants to contribute there, please?
I think that is the faith of the prasadam, because in India, in the temples, the festival times and all, thousands of people eat and nobody gets this food poisoning or any after effects from this, except because of that faith. I think that because it's offered to God.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, we'll finish this session. Give a big hand to Madhu, please, and we'll see next week.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Madhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.